Hello, welcome back to the channel. I'm going to do a quick video here about the attributes in the game, damage scaling, all this sort of stuff that is applicable to this low level character but continues right through to level 100. It just gets a heck of a lot more complicated the more gear you equip. So we've got a starter character, it's level 6. I run this thing through, leveled it up. I haven't applied any attribute points. I haven't picked a mastery because that would just complicate matters. What we're going to start talking about is, first of all, the attributes here. Physique. Physique doesn't buff a damage type. You might have played games before where if you put points into strength, you will boost your physical damage. Physique doesn't boost the damage type. It increases your health, it increases your health regen, it raises your defensive ability. And defensive ability is your chance not to be hit and your chance not to be crit. You cannot lower your chance to be hit below 60%. Once you get it to 60%, everything's got a 60% chance to hit you, but you can reduce your chance to be crit to 0% by constantly raising your defensive ability. That's physique. Cunning. Now, cunning buffs physical damage types. It says on the tooltip there, physical, pierce, bleed, and internal trauma. So internal trauma damage is the damage over time version of physical damage. There's actually a damage type called physical, even though physical encompasses the ones that are described there. Pierce damage is different from physical damage, but it's still buffed by cunning. Bleed is not a damage over time version of pierce. So if you buff pierce damage, you're not buffing bleed. If you buff bleed, you're not buffing pierce. All of these things get scaled up with points in cunning. Cunning also increases your offensive ability. That is your chance to hit and your chance to crit enemies. As you can see there, when I've been running around with this thing, the last enemy I attacked was a Walking Dead zombie. My chance to hit it was just under 100%, 97.7, but I had a chance to crit it at 7.7%. You can raise that by putting cunning up. So those figures on offensive ability, 97.7 and 7.7. If I raise cunning, what it does is it recalculates it. So based on that cunning, it's now 99.2 to hit, 9.2% to crit. Spirit. Spirit is an interesting one. It scales all the non-physical damage types. So any magic type, any elemental damage type, vitality damage, acid damage, chaos damage, all that stuff, all the stuff that isn't covered by cunning gets buffed by spirit. But spirit doesn't increase either of these. It doesn't increase your offensive ability or defensive ability. But it does increase your amount of energy. I've got 250 down here, and my energy regen rate, which is currently 6.5. So if I put spirit up, you can see the amount of energy I've got has increased to 330. My energy regen rate is now 6.9. Now, the interesting thing about these is you can put 1 point every time you level up. You get 1 point. I've got 5 because I'm level 6, so level 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 I got a point. When you put 1 point in physique, your actual physique value goes up by 8. It's the same with the other two. That's without anything adding a percentage. Once you start equipping stuff like this hat, not that hat, that hat, plus 6% physique. If you've got that on there, if you're wearing that, your physique's already up a couple of points. If you put 1 point in there, it goes up to 61, so it goes up by more. So what it does is that is taking that percentage into consideration when it's calculating what you increase that by. If you take it off, it will go back to what it should have been. So you go 8, 8, 8. It's going up by 8, unless you've got something on that changes it. So I was talking about, if you've got a load of gear on, this becomes harder to explain because you've got figures changing all over the place. Right, so let's have a look at the damage scaling. So that's the basic stuff that happens when you put points into those attributes. Once you start equipping gear, let's take this for example. Scrap metal sword blade does physical damage. Now to have a look at how this damage, I mean you can hover over that and it says 9 to 24. If you go on to tab 2, your default weapon attack is the attack with that thing there. So at the moment, your weapon damage, that is mouse button, right mouse button, weapon attack, is the same as weapon damage because there's no skills attached to it. So if you hover over that, it shows you you're doing 11 to 29 physical damage, even though that thing says you're doing 9 to 24. Okay, so that's what you're actually doing. That isn't the damage you're doing, that's what you're actually doing. Damage breakdown for your right mouse button ability against a single target, modified by all bonuses from equipment and skills and attributes. Doesn't mention that, but it does. Right, so if you want to increase the damage that that's doing, if you put a whole load of points into Physique, yeah, your defensive ability goes up, your health goes up, all sorts, right? But that 9 to 24 damage that's showing on there doesn't change, but that 11 to 29 doesn't change, more importantly, because that's where you're going to see it change. Cunning, okay? We whack Cunning up. That doesn't change, it says 9 to 24, because that's what the weapon damage is. Your actual damage is 12 to 33, because you put Cunning up. Let's just do that again. 11 to 29, right? Whack Cunning up. 12 to 33. You can see it change on tab 2. You can't see it change there. Alright, and that's just telling you what it is. So let's undo that stuff again. So just to show what I was talking about with Spirit, that's a physical damage thing. You put Spirit up, it's still going to be 11 to 29. Everything else has gone up. That's gone up your energy regen rate, but that thing hasn't changed. Let's look at a different type of damage. This thing doesn't do physical damage. It's a gun that does fire damage. And it does a fireball, granted skill, chance on attack. That just might or might not happen when you're shooting things. So if you, again, if you were to put, I won't bother, but if you were to put Physique up, that's not going to change. It's doing 15 to 29. If you put Cunning up, it's going to stay at 15 to 29. But your chance to hit, as I showed you before, your chance to hit and chance to crit goes up. Right, let's put Spirit up. 17 to 33. Right, let's just do that again. Right, so that thing is doing 15 to 29 fire. You can see there, 15 to 29 fire damage. Put a bunch of points into Spirit, and it's doing 17 to 33 fire damage. Right, I'm going to edge into complicated territory now. Try and stay with me. Here's an item I picked up. Now, this does, because of the prefix on it, it shouldn't do ether damage, but the prefix warped on that rare item is adding in ether damage, and it's also adding in that conversion, physical damage converted to ether damage. It does physical damage. It says it at the top. It does bleeding damage. So it's doing a physical attack damage type called physical damage. It's doing a physical damage over time called bleeding. It's buffing bleeding, and it's converting some of its physical damage to ether damage. Now you can get that weapon within minutes of walking out of Devil's Crossing from a boss, and it might have some weird prefix on it, and you might pick that up and look at that and think, what is that all about? To overcomplicate it, required Physique 62, so I can't even use it until I put points in Physique. Now we know that Physique doesn't buff a damage type, but I've got to put a couple of points in there. That needed 62, that's gone up to 66. I can now equip this. Right, so let's have a look at this. Weapon attack. Whoa. It's doing 3 damage types. It's doing physical, ether and bleeding. Now, we all know what's going to happen. If I put points into Cunning, ether is going to stay 7 to 8. Physical's going to go up and bleeding's going to go up, because those are 2 physical damage types that are scaled with Cunning. So ether is 7 to 8. Physical's 20 to 27. Bleeding's 14. Let's just quickly do that again. Right. I undid the points. Notice this important, right? I undid those points. Why is that gone red? Why is that showing red? It's showing red because I can't use it. Notice it's no longer in my hand, because my Physique isn't high enough to support that. So keep an eye on, if you've got any items that you're equipping that have suddenly gone red, it could be because you took something off, and there's a thing that buffs Physique. Now what you could do is you could put that on and hope for the best, but it's not enough. Physique only goes up to 52. If that had, I don't know, 50% Physique, you'd be laughing, right? So let's put the points back in Physique. And all of a sudden that goes green, I can use it again. Right. So Cunning didn't buff the ether damage, but it buffed the physical and bleeding. What's going to happen if I put points into Spirit? Have a quick look at this, right? So ether 7 to 8. It's going to go up. Not much, but it's going to go up. Because this is a non-physical damage type. So ether's gone up to 8 to 9. The other thing, 18 to 25, bleeding 13. Let's just do that again. 2 points in Physique. 18 to 25, 13. Points in Cunning. 20 to 27 and 14. So you can see there what I was saying. Physique doesn't buff the damage type, but you might need to put points into Physique to be able to wield a weapon before you even start worrying about buffing the damage type. Okay, so that's thrilling. So we had the physical stuff buffed by Cunning, non-physical damage type buffed by Spirit, but you need points in Cunning to get your offensive ability up. You need points in Physique to get your defensive ability up so you don't get critted. So this is all going well. So what we're going to do now is have a look and see. Spirit changes your energy regen. Not much, but it does. So let's try something a little bit crazy. Let's put that on there, but let's attach a Searing Ember component to it. So that thing does physical damage. This Searing Ember, if you look at what this does, 2 to 4 fire damage. What it says by 2 to 4 fire damage is it means it's going to add 2 to 4 fire damage to your weapon attack. It's got a plus 12% fire damage on it, and it's going to convert physical damage to fire damage. It's also got a Fire Blast skill, which is purely fire damage and burn damage. Burn is the damage over time version of fire. Right, let's put that on here. You can do this, right? Crazy. So all of a sudden, your weapon attack is physical and fire. And that's with no points in here yet. Physical and fire. Notice fire's 4 to 9, physical's 10 to 26. Back a load of points in Cunning. Fire's 4 to 9, physical 11 to whatever. Undo, points in Spirit. Physical 10 to 26, fire to 4 to 10. It's very, very important when you start messing around with stuff, equipping things, adding things on, doing things. Keep going on to tab 2 and have a look and see what you're actually doing. Because if you're buffing a damage type and you're not actually dealing that damage type, whatever buffs you apply are wasted. Hopefully that makes some kind of sense. Right, so let's get this even more complicated. If you've got a Searing Ember, granted skill Fire Blast, and you're thinking, what's that all about? That's an actual attack skill. Now I'm going to put it on here. So on tab 2, whoa, my weapon damage is still showing what the weapon's doing, but it doesn't break it down into damage types. The only place you can see the damage types being dealt are up here. So if you want to see what that weapon's doing, you've got to stick it back on as a default weapon attack. But for now, let's leave Fire Blast on there. So that Fire Blast is granted by that component. Because I've got that component on that weapon, I've got that Fire Blast skill. There it is. Bingo. Now that's saying 70 to 81 fire damage, 159 burn damage. However, it's actually doing some physical damage. You're going to say, why is that? Read the tooltip. Fire Blast, right? 18 energy cost, 2.5 meter radius. That's the blast effect when it hits a target. 20% main hand damage. So it's picking up the damage from the weapon and adding it into Fire Blast. The weapon does physical damage, so it gets added into Fire Blast damage. So you've got to be aware of all this stuff. And like I said, the more you play the game, the more weird items you pick up, the more complicated all of this gets. So that's that. Now, what would have been more sensible, what's that do? Fire damage. Would have been more sensible to put that on that. And then you wouldn't have all this physical nonsense getting added in. So we should see what happens when we do this. So I'll stick it on that gun. Fire Blast. It's all fire and burn. Because it's pulling in weapon damage and the weapon only does fire damage, doesn't do physical damage. Let's swap them back and just check what I'm talking about. So that physical damage Fire Blast is doing is coming from that weapon. It's that 20% it's picking up from that 9 to 24 physical damage. It's adding it into Fire Blast. Simplified a bit. It's just fire and burn. Right, so what we'll do, there's no points allocated here. I'm going to stand here and I'm going to shoot Fire Blast at this until my energy runs out. Right, I think she managed to fire off 16 fire blasts before it ran out. You got an energy potion here, I'll take them. Right, so it's filled it back up. So she fired about 16 before energy ran out. Spirits, okay. So let's see what this is doing now. 79 to 94, 53 burn. Bunch of points in spirit. 89 to 106, 61 burn. But my energy regen is also up, so let's count how many times we can shoot before it runs out of energy. So let it charge up. Here we go.
I'm out of energy.
22. Okay, so with spirit at its default value, I can't undo it now. Doesn't matter. With spirit at its default value, I was able to fire 16 fire blasts before I ran out of energy. I put 5 points in spirit and I was able to fire 22 shots before it ran out of energy. A couple of last things before I run this video on for too long. You talked about Physique not buffing any damage types, but you need it for defensive ability, so you reduce your chance to be hit and chance to be critted. Cunning raises offensive ability, it also buffs physical damage types. Spirit increases your energy and your energy regen, and it raises the damage dealt by non-physical damage types. Of course there's more to it than all of this, because Grim Dawn is complicated as heck. I'm trying to keep to the simple stuff. One last thing, let's put this on. That buffs chaos damage, increases your energy regen, gives you fire resistance and lightning resistance. You can see the fire resistance and lightning resistance on the resistance screen here. Energy regen shows up there, it's gone up to 9. See, it goes up from 6.9 to 9.12. So that percentage increase, don't underestimate how important little percentage increases to energy regen are. Let's have a look at the damage. So putting that on, if you look at that fire blast thing, fire 89 to 106, burn 61. Equipping that doesn't change it because that doesn't buff fire damage. It buffs chaos damage. We're not dealing chaos damage. You've got to watch it when you pick gear up that looks really cool and buffs a load of damage types. If it's a percentage increase but you're not dealing that damage type at all, like a flat value of that damage type from any source, it's pointless having that. Resistances are always good to have. Energy regen is always good to have. Right, I could have gone on and on, but I'm not going to. Hopefully that was useful. Let me know in comments if this sort of video is helpful, and I'll catch you all in the next one.